So Thursday night, which was the opening night here in Australia, I went to see The Northman, and since I made that video the other day, I really wanted to just give my thoughts on the movie. This will be not scripted like the other video. This will be very much candid and just me giving my own personal thoughts and whether it lived up to my hype and the expectations and all that. So overall, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I feel hesitant to say that it lived up to my expectations because I think my expectations were pretty high, but I really did have a great time overall. I'd compare it more to The Witch in quality than The Lighthouse because The Lighthouse was just incredible and The Witch was great but not incredible, if you know what I mean. So I feel like they're on the same kind of level, but they're very different kinds of movies, so that's not really a fair comparison. The Northman is obviously on a significantly larger scale than The Witch, and it's a completely different genre. It's not a horror movie, although there are some horror elements to it. I think one of the things for me going into it was I sort of expected it to be a bit of a larger scale, like because it was a $90 million movie, but then I also have to consider that that was with the inflated COVID budget as well, stuff that had to happen like reshoots and COVID delays and all that sort of thing. So I shouldn't really expect it to be on the scale of something like Spartacus, if you know what I mean. There is a bit of scale in the sense that there's a major battle early on, but for the most part it's actually a fairly mid-scale sort of film. It doesn't have a lot of like grand battles or that sort of thing, and the majority of the film actually takes place in one area, which is Iceland. It's not like massive sweeping epic in the same sense that I think I had the impression of going into it, which was maybe my fault. Almost every performance in the movie is great. Alexander Skarsgard is just fantastic. It's the lead. Like physically, he's got the physicality for the role, but he's also, just really quality actor. Skarsgard is just so intense in the movie, and it's great to watch. Willem Dafoe plays a small but significant role in the movie, and he's always fantastic. He's just got a magnetic personality, of course, and so he's great. He plays Hamir the Fool. Nicole Kidman as well is fantastic in the film. There's more to her than meets the eye, and Claes Bang, who I've never heard of before, is also really good. I think the only time I felt let down with the acting was Anya Taylor-Joy, mostly just because her accent felt a little bit off. And in terms of accents, everybody's doing at least their best attempt of a authentic Old Norse type accent, and I think they did a really good job overall. Some of the stuff they did with characters like Hamir the Fool and a few other witch type characters in the film, where they get really into the surreal side of the spirituality, it almost feels like, like a shamanistic drug trip kind of thing. That's something that you see a lot in Robert Eggers movies, is the accurate historical stuff, but then it's mixed with the supernatural and the surreal. I guess you'd put it in that like mythopoetic tradition where reality is not just regular reality as we know it, but it's mixed with the beliefs and the spirituality of the people of the time. I remember when I was watching through the behind the scenes stuff for The Witch, you sort of get this impression from Eggers that that's sort of how he likes to tell his stories. Like, to them, the idea that the witches are out there isn't just superstition, it's as real to them as the rocks on the ground and the trees in the forest. It's all very, very real. And there's the same sort of thing in The Northman. The supernatural elements of the Norse mythology aren't just superstition, they're actively involved in the plot, even if it's in a subtle way sometimes. For the most part, the story is pretty simple. It's actually inspired by the same legend that was the inspiration for Hamlet, which is the story of Amleth, and you've got the same sort of thing where the uncle kills the king. I know it diverges a fair bit from the original legend. I don't think it's meant to be a one-to-one adaptation or anything. And about halfway, maybe at 2/3 through the film, there's this twist which sort of changes your perspective on everything, and I don't think that was part of the original legend, but I thought that was great. I was actually starting to feel a little bit more like the plot had sort of worn out its uniqueness at that sort of point in the film, and then that twist sort of changed everything for me and reinvigorated the story. And it's really with this twist that you start to see a more interesting, a more modern, I suppose, and a more complicated view on the nature of revenge and what it does to a person and the consequences of it. And I found that very compelling, and I thought that really sort of elevated the movie to another level. Some of the things the film does really well are the action and the cinematography, and of course those two go hand in hand a lot of the time, and it avoided all the pitfalls that you see with a lot of modern movies with too much quick cutting, too much difficulty in telling what's actually going on. It all makes all the action very clear, and they do it in fairly long shots, so you get to see a lot of dynamic action. For the most part, this works really well. There's a few times, like in that earlier battle scene, where you get the sense like, oh, people should be attacking more, but it does better than most movies do, really. I think it's maybe not perfect action in some scenes, but some other scenes they do it just incredibly well, and it's very satisfying. There is gore in the movie, but not really as much as I expected. I kind of feel like there might have been a bit more, and some of that might have been cut out in the second edit, but I'm not really sure about that. That's just speculation. But the action and gore that is there is fairly visceral and very well choreographed, of course. The visuals are beautiful throughout the movie, but especially towards the end when they're at the volcano, that stuff is just, stuff is just amazing. And of course all the stuff where it goes into the surreal trances of the religious ceremonies, where you just feel like you're in another world, that you're completely in the mindset of the people of that time, and you feel the religious fervor, because I think that that's something that Robert Eggers excels at, is making the supernatural feel real and making it feel terrifying and just incredibly absorbing. There are a few things in the movie that bothered me, and this is a minor spoiler, but I'll give a spoiler warning now for this amount of time as I'm showing on screen. After the reveal of Amleth and who he is, and the fact that he's trying to take his revenge and all of that, he goes to hide in the hills, and his wife stays at the farm, and I never really understood why, because the next morning they go and they try to figure out who helped him, and obviously his wife is going to be the prime suspect. So then he comes and he turns himself in, and he gets captured because of that, and she manages to escape, only for him to later escape and her to help take him to safety. And firstly, you could have just cut that out and had them both escape to the hills at the same time. And on the other hand, also, why? Like, I don't understand from a character motivation point of view why they left her there when it was obvious that she was going to be implicated and she'd have to run away. So I didn't get that. And I don't know if that was part of the original script or if that is added. I'm actually quite curious what was taken away, what was added, and what made Eggers' script different from the new script. But yeah, that moment definitely bothered me. So yeah, definitely worth watching. I don't feel like the pacing was too bad for the most part. There was that little bit in the middle where I was just wondering, is there going to be that much more to the ideas of the film? I guess because that's something that interests me. But there was, and that really improved it for me. And yeah, for the most part, it doesn't feel its length. It feels very satisfying as it goes along. There's lots of action, although not necessarily on a massive scale like I kind of expected there to be. The last 15-20 minutes of the film really does bring it home and show what revenge really means to this filmmaker. But yeah, in particular the cinematography, I really love how some of the moves sort of change the perspective. They start as if they're looking from one sort of view, and then it moves around and you feel like you've become another person all in the one shot. Obviously I don't have any clips from the movie to show, I've only got the trailers, but you'll see when you watch the movie, you'll see what I mean. It plays sometimes with time and perception, or in the way that he moves the camera, and it's really great. Again, my overall opinion is at least as good as The Witch, maybe a bit better, but not as good as The Lighthouse. Don't expect something huge like Braveheart kind of scale, expect something more personal and sort of mid-scale, but still some pretty impressive views. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do any other reviews or give ratings normally, but this one I'll probably give like an 8 out of 10. So yeah, go see it.